Nothing or no thing is the complete absence of anything as the opposite of something and an antithesis of everything. The concept of nothing has been a matter of philosophical debate since at least the 5th century BC. Early Greek philosophers argued that it was impossible for nothing to exist. The concept of nothing has fascinated philosophers, scientists, and theologians for centuries. In our daily lives, we often use the word casually. A room can have nothing in it, or an event can amount to nothing. But when we dig deeper into what nothing truly means in a cosmic or philosophical sense, the conversation becomes more complex. Can nothing, an absolute void, the total absence of everything, really exist? Or is it a concept that is, in itself, paradoxical and impossible? A Godless Universe explores the philosophical and scientific interpretations of nothing and the intriguing possibility that true nothingness may actually be an illusion. From a philosophical standpoint, the concept of nothing has been both intriguing and problematic. Ancient Greek philosophers grappled with the idea of non-being. Parmenides, for example, argued that non-being, or nothing, was impossible. He claimed that thinking about nothing is itself a contradiction, because if you can think about it, it must in some sense exist. Parmenides famously concluded, "Nothing comes from nothing," implying that everything must have some form of being. Other philosophers, such as Plato, agreed that nothingness is essentially non-existent in a meaningful way. For Plato, the universe was made of eternal forms and ideas, with no room for an empty void. Later thinkers, like Aristotle, also had trouble with the concept of nothingness, particularly in relation to movement. Aristotle argued that a true vacuum, empty space, devoid of matter, was impossible because, without something to move through, objects could not move at all. Fast forward to modern philosophy, and the debate about nothing continues. Martin Heidegger, the 20th century existentialist philosopher, famously posed the question, "Why is there something rather than nothing?" Heidegger suggested that nothingness is not the opposite of being, but instead a part of the fabric of existence. He believed that humans experience the possibility of nothingness through concepts like death and anxiety, but actual nothingness remains elusive. In science, the concept of nothing also presents a paradox. Isaac Newton envisioned the universe as a giant machine operating in an infinite void. In his view, space and time existed independently of matter. In other words, empty space, nothing, was the stage on which the drama of the universe played out. However, later scientific developments, particularly in quantum physics and relativity, have challenged the idea of an empty void. Albert Einstein revolutionized our understanding of space and time with his theory of relativity. In Einstein's universe, space and time are not passive backdrops, but are dynamic and interconnected. Space can warp, bend, and stretch in response to matter and energy. This suggests that even so-called empty space is not nothing, but something that can be altered and influenced by forces like gravity. In quantum physics, the concept of nothing becomes even more elusive. The quantum vacuum, often thought of as the closest approximation to nothing, is not truly empty. Instead, it is teeming with activity. Due to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, particles and antiparticles are constantly popping in and out of existence in this vacuum. This phenomenon, known as quantum fluctuations, means that even in what we might call empty space, there is still energy and transient matter. This leads some scientists to suggest that true nothingness is impossible in the quantum realm because the very fabric of space is filled with virtual particles. The idea of vacuum energy further complicates the notion of nothing. According to modern physics, even a perfect vacuum has an intrinsic energy called the vacuum energy, which can have observable effects, such as the Casimir effect. This phenomenon, where two uncharged metal plates in a vacuum are drawn together by quantum fluctuations, demonstrates that even in a void, forces and energies persist. Thus, in scientific terms, the more we explore the universe at the macro and micro levels, the more we see that nothing is not truly possible. Even in the most desolate corners of space, there is still the presence of energy, fluctuations, and quantum possibilities. Religions and theological doctrines also engage with the concept of nothing, especially in relation to the creation of the universe. In Christianity, the doctrine of creatio ex nihilo asserts that God created the universe out of nothing. This idea posits that before God's act of creation, there was no space, no time, no matter, just absolute nothingness. Yet this theological nothing is still tied to the presence of a divine will, meaning that even here, nothing seems to necessitate the existence of some force or entity. Similarly, in Buddhism, the concept of sunyata, often translated as emptiness, refers to the idea that all phenomena are empty of inherent independent existence. However, this is not a nihilistic concept of nothingness. Instead, it implies that everything is interdependent and constantly changing, with no permanent, unchanging essence. In this sense, emptiness or nothingness is more about the impermanence of all things rather than the absence of existence itself. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus took a more human-centered approach to nothingness, focusing on the role of nothingness in the human experience. Sartre argued that nothingness is central to human freedom, as it represents the possibility of choice and change. For Camus, the absurdity of life, the disconnect between humanity's search for meaning and the indifferent universe, presents a kind of existential nothingness that humans must grapple with. In both cases, nothingness is not an absence of being but a framework for understanding human existence. The paradox of nothing becomes clear when we consider that discussing nothingness requires us to think about it in terms of something. To define nothing is to give it an essence, making it, by definition, something. Even in scientific terms, where quantum physics gets us closest to a concept of nothing, we find that space is never truly empty. Whether through quantum fluctuations, vacuum energy, or the structure of space-time itself, the idea of an absolute void becomes increasingly untenable. One might argue that the very concept of nothing is a human construct, a way of framing our understanding of absence or non-being. After all, our minds are wired to conceptualize opposites, light and darkness, life and death, existence and non-existence. But just because we can conceive of nothing doesn't mean it can exist in any meaningful way. In both philosophical and scientific terms, the idea of true nothing seems impossible. The more we explore the nature of reality, the more we find that what appears to be nothing is actually full of potentiality, energy, and structure. Whether through the lens of quantum mechanics, where even a vacuum is not empty, or through existential philosophy, where nothingness shapes our understanding of existence, the concept of nothing remains elusive. In the end, the paradox of nothing may reflect the limitations of human thought and language. As we attempt to grasp the infinite complexities of existence, we find that nothingness, like so many other abstractions, slips through our fingers, leaving us with the undeniable presence of something. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time in a godless universe.